Hello, everyone. This is Peter Mullins from Spreedly. Thanks again for taking time to participate in today's payments dialogue. Today, I'm joined by Chantal de Meere from Connective Payments. I'd like to welcome you to Payments Dialogue.
Thank you very much.
Terrific. Well, it's great to have you here. First off, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background. What your experience has been in payments, and love to hear how you came into the payments world.
Well, that's been 14 years ago, actually. I started in a commercial role for an acquirer. I think I've seen half of the value chain of the payments, starting with the acquiring. Had my own merchant platform in Magento, so that's where I learned the front-end conversion optimization, back-end reconciliation, automation, integrations with different platforms, etc. I sold that company and worked for a payment service provider in the Netherlands for 3.5 years, and that's where I gained my true passion for payments. Truly, some people don't believe it. My friends don't believe it when I say passion for payments. But besides the commercial role, I really had the passion for the technique behind it, and that's where I grew from where I am today. Mm-hmm. Today, I advise large multinationals in optimizing their payment infrastructure. This relates to integration with several payment service providers, different acquirers, optimizing their costs, but also improving the efficiency of their processes related to payments, subscriptions, infrastructures.
Great. That's terrific. And so right now you're working with these multinational companies. So they must have interesting experiences and requirements because of their international nature, I
imagine. Most definitely. But what I still see is with a lot of merchants that they have a lack of understanding of what the payments industry truly is about. And that's where I, as a consultant, come in to really help these companies to have a better understanding of what is necessary, what is more efficient, if it's better to integrate with a platform in between, like yourself, or if it's better to integrate directly, what is necessary, what is it that they need, set up the right requirements. These are the things mostly a lot of multinationals, but also like medium and large merchants are still struggling with.
Yeah, so that question of efficiency and optimization that you're talking about, that's something I think is just so important. When you say that merchants aren't aware of many of the things that are going on behind the scenes, it just makes me think about how for some merchants, they're looking for simplicity. They want to plug in and just move on with payments. But when you're dealing with hundreds of millions or many billions of dollars, then the efficiency and optimization becomes important, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. It's funny that it's still a latent need, actually. What I truly see is that most merchants try to improve their front end to get as much customers to their websites, etc., which is great and, of course, very important. But the moment of payment is something they forget sometimes, and how to optimize that customer experience at the last part of where they click the buy button or the OK button. And this is something like even top of mind, quite easy, but especially the part what happens afterwards, the optimization on reconciliation, optimization on authorization rates, how improve the conversion based on the integrations you have with local acquirers, with local payment methods. These things are like very often forgotten, and most companies say, just works fine. It works fine. Just please don't touch it. As long as no one touches it, it's yeah.
Yeah, because it's amazing if you're able to get that optimization up or the success rate up from 85 to 86%, or just 1%. It's amazing what impact that can have on your bottom line.
For sure. Yes, for sure.
So now you're based in the Netherlands and you work all over the world. But one of the reasons why we had this chat or decided to have this chat was because of the interesting nature of payments within Europe. As an American based company, we're always hearing about American merchants learning from European experiences. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on some of the major priorities for merchants in Europe when it comes to payments.
Well, Europe is a really complex market. If you refer to America with the complexity of VAT in each state, you could see the complexity in Europe somewhere similar when it regards payments. In Europe, we have around 200 different payment methods, including direct debit, SEPA direct debit, but Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, American Express are all there, of course, but we have our local payment methods, and each country has their own. What you see, for instance, in Asia is that there is a lot of mobile integration. In Europe, it's still like local payment methods, which created by, for instance, in the Netherlands, by the local banks. It's a direct payment. And it's actually like a bank transfer, but then with an e-commerce platform in between. That's how you could see it. But these local payment methods have a huge market share in each country, and each country works differently, has a different way of working, has a different processing engine behind it, different settlements. So it's quite complex when it regards the European market and local payment methods.
I see. Okay.
Credit cards alone, you cannot conquer the European market.
Right. Okay, great. Now, you mentioned that many of these payment methods were driven by banks. Are there merchants that are driving these as well, or consortiums of merchants, or is it largely driven by the banks themselves?
Currently, there's a movement in the payment industry. For instance, here we see the companies driving certain payment methods towards the consumers, and therefore the retailers need to accept them as well. But this is still very, very small. Mostly it's related to the banks and a different way of paying with a mobile or with bank transfer, or yeah.
Okay. And now those local payment methods, that could be peer-to-peer, so me paying you, or a individual consumer paying a merchant as well. In both cases, is that right?
These payment methods are not peer-to-peer. It's really mostly merchant to consumer.
Okay.
Of course, there are payment methods in Europe where this is possible with peer-to-peer, and you see this more and more. Like we have a local payment which is called Tiki. This is used by a lot of consumers, and it's peer-to-peer payments, and now merchants are adopting it as well.
So now with the rise of those alternative payment methods, merchants, I imagine, are feeling a lot of pressure to make those available to their consumers. Was there a tipping point when it just became essential for merchants to offer those payment methods? And are we well past that, where every merchant basically has to have those alternative payment methods on their for their e-commerce?
Well, if you're in the local markets, the adoption of credit cards is not that big in each country. In the local markets, you really need to have the right payment methods, because we just don't have enough credit card adoption in some countries. Look at Germany, for instance. Germany it has a huge market share with PayPal, which is also an alternative payment method, but it's because they don't have a lot of credit cards there. In the Dutch market, around 10-12% has credit card. So the rest is alternative payment methods. So if you want to come to the Dutch market or to the German market, you need to have something else besides credit cards. Otherwise, you will not have as much conversion as you can.
I see. Okay. So in terms of share, for retailers, do you have any data about what kind of share of payments are going through alternative payments in perhaps in the Netherlands, as an example, or any other country?
In the Netherlands, there is a company who's doing research every year on the market share of each payment method. However, unfortunately, in Europe, we don't have that same kind of research, and
right.
yearly report. But it is possible if you work closely with your payment partner or with us as consultants, we can help you with this to have the highest conversion rates based on each payment method. Some payment service providers even offer a hosted payment page where based on the IP address, they rank the payment methods in the right order based on the adoption rate.
Okay, that's interesting. So for a merchant that's perhaps based elsewhere outside of Europe and is looking to enter into the European market, um, is that are they able to simply offer one alternative payment method per country, or is it essentially required that that they're going to have to offer multiple? Like, for instance, is a consumer likely to themselves have multiple payment methods where they could pick and choose depending on availability, or do you suggest to retailers that they must have a broad array of those alternative payment methods in order to cover the market?
That depends on the market share of each payment method. So for instance, in Belgium, you have Bancontact that has a high percentage of market share. However, you also have like local banking buttons, and they still have like 4 or 5, sometimes even more % of market share. The question is the adoption rate as high if you don't offer these? Or do you really need these buttons in the local market to make sure that you have as much conversion as you would like to have?
Okay.
And
Okay,
so
great.
like a good partner is really important with this, because if you are integrated with the right partner who offers these payment methods, it's just a question of like, okay, how do you integrate with this partner? Well, in case with Streetly, that's an easy answer. But then it's the question, okay, how many payment methods do you offer on your website? You don't want to confuse customers by offering like 20 different payment methods.
Right.
So sometimes maybe one is even enough, but in some countries it's better to have 2 or 3.
Okay. Yeah, that was something I was going to ask you was from a user experience. There's user experience in terms of do you accept my payment method? There's user experience in terms of will the transaction process successfully? And there's user experience in terms of I don't want to have 50 different methods that are jumbling up the checkout page and I can't pick which one. So there must be a balance, I imagine, for a merchant. Or maybe there's just new methods of user experience to help people choose and without being overwhelmed by those options for alternative payments, I imagine.
Well, like if you look at and that's the complexity of Europe. If you have these local payment methods and the people are used to seeing multiple payment methods because that's the offering in their country, then it's not strange to offer maybe even 4 or 5 payment methods.
Mm-hmm.
But in countries where there are only one alternative payment method is the main one, such as in the Netherlands with Ideal, then why would you offer all these other payment methods if this is the main payment method? You don't want to use. But for instance, in Belgium, it's not rare that you have the other payment methods as an option as well.
I see. Okay, great. So maybe I'll just take a step back and ask you just to define what an alternative payment method is. Could you just describe what that is? I know it can be a very broad term, but it would be helpful for our listeners if you could give a perspective on that.
Well, it really depends on each market. Like, for instance, you have alternative payment method is actually everything except a credit card.
Okay.
So even PayPal is an alternative payment method, if you may say so. But alternative payment methods are could be a bank transfer, direct debit. In the Dutch market, it's Ideal. Ideal is like a bank transfer, but then automated, and it has a guarantee for the merchant, which is a good thing. There's no risk on chargebacks. There's no risk on fraud. So in Norway, you have like with mobile, they pay with their mobile instead of, and that's withdrawn from their statements of their mobile. In Belgium, you have local payment methods. It's all like most of it, it's bank transfer, but in a different way. And then with an immediate confirmation of the transaction. So based on this, like normally with a bank transfer, you have to wait till the money's on the bank and you're not sure if you can send the product or deliver your digital goods.
Right.
With these payment methods, you have an immediate reaction of the approval of the payment, which prevents delays.
I see. Okay.
And it could be a whole variety of different solutions, which is common in each market.
Okay. Now, because of the linkage to banks, does that hinder cross-border alternative payment methods? So, do you see other alternative payment methods that are bank related that cross borders? So, someone in Germany and Norway and Italy could use one payment method, or is it so linked to a bank that just depends on where the bank is operating?
Ideal is mostly is Netherlands, and in Belgium, customers do not work with the same banks, so that's why it wouldn't work in Belgium or in Germany. There's been like there's Sofortüberweisung, that's the German ideal, but it's a different way of integrating it. And with the PSD2, I'm not sure what the future of that payment method will be, but that's a solution actually every bank can use. It's sort of direct payment or a direct bank transfer, but this platform is in between the customer and the bank. And related to PSD2, in the future that wouldn't be possible anymore, but that's possible to be used by different countries and different banks. But so far I haven't seen a payment method besides the PayPal and credit cards which are able to be used cross-border.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. So earlier you'd mentioned about the ability to with APMs to have that direct and immediate approval because the funds are in that account. So I imagine that has a big impact on fraud for merchants and must be a big benefit for them.
For sure, yeah, it's a huge benefit, and that's also the reason why the Dutch market doesn't want to go forward towards credit cards or any other payment method, even though the customer is less protected. The customer is still has this as a preferred payment method. And the funny thing is that for the merchant, there's only win-win situation with this. There's no risk on fraud. They get the money instantly, and the customer is not protected. So if they want to have the money back, they have to negotiate with the merchant, but they don't have a way, just like PayPal or credit card, to get the money back with a chargeback or anything.
Oh, okay, got it.
So I'm not sure about all the different payment methods in Europe, to be honest, when it regards fraud. But alternative payment methods, especially if it's like an instant bank transfer, then there is zero to limited risk with fraud.
Okay, terrific. Now it must be interesting because if different countries across Europe are having different approaches to APMs, there must be a lot of learnings that go on. A lot of Norway sees something that's interesting that's happening in Germany, that sees something interesting happening in Spain, and so being able to pull examples. And so, do you see that where there's experimentation happening in one market that other markets learn from?
And maybe this is starting now, but we're still talking about banks, and they're not as agile as we all wish they would be. Experimenting, I do see that they're changing their behaviors regarding this. However, there are two new payment methods in the Netherlands, and they've been developing for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. And it's still not fully adopted because it's not fully supported or delivered by the banks. They need to do different marketing. So I wish the banks would be more agile and adopt more solutions from different markets. There are some banks who are doing this, but we're still talking about huge companies, banks, who,
Right.
yeah, so it takes time. So I wish there would be more experimenting, but this is most of the time the fintech companies doing the experimentation.
Right. No, that makes sense. So speaking of the experimentation with payments companies and fintech companies, there's also a lot of alternative payment methods that are paid later or micro loans for purchasing. So that's something that's now we're seeing increasingly in the U.S., but that's been established in Europe for some time now. Is that something that you see quite a bit?
Yes, for sure, especially in retail when you deliver goods. It's really important to have a solution where you can offer the person to receive the product first and then do the payment.
Hmm.
However, there's a cost related to this for the merchant. So the cost for the merchant around this payment methods are quite high, and most of the time the merchant can do a surcharge to the consumer to make sure that he doesn't pay the whole cost of this specific payment method.
Mm. Okay, terrific. So, as for American companies that are looking to learn from the example of Europe, are there any lessons that you'd hope that American companies could pick up from the experiences in Europe?
I think it's really good to partner together with the right payment partner, ask advice from consultants. Um, the European payment market is really complex, and if you want to start here in Europe or want to grow or want to improve your conversion rates, ask for help not only from your payment partner but from actual experts, because
Hmm.
just like I said, it's as complex as the tax with all the states in America. That's the case with the payment methods in Europe.
Right. No, that makes sense. So, just speaking of that complexity, are there events or publications, or where should someone go that's outside of Europe? Where should they go from a conference or a learning perspective to learn more about the European market? Other than, of course, speaking with folks such as yourself, of course.
Yes, yeah, like me and my colleagues can give a lot of information.
That's right.
But for sure, Money 2020, this is also based in Europe.
Mm,
Um, we have MPE Berlin. It's really interesting. ICE in London.
mm,
But ICE is mostly related to fraud management and risk and
mm.
compliance. So I think these are really important. But
Terrific. Well, Chantal, this has been a terrific conversation. I really enjoyed it. I got to learn a tremendous amount about APMs and how they relate to the European market. Great. And Chantal, can you give me a bit more information about Connective Payments and what your group does?
yes, for sure. Very happy to tell you a little bit more about it. I joined Connective Payments last year. However, they started in 2014. Connective Payments is a consultancy firm specifically in payments. They do not only strategic consulting, but also the rollout of each project. And what I think the strength of our company and what I like the most about it is the fact that it started with two consultants who are self-employed, have extended knowledge and expertise around payments. They joined forces, and bit by bit, in a few years, now we have 10 colleagues, because we keep having our individual responsibilities. We have ownership of our projects. However, we share the knowledge with each other around the payments.
Mm,
We are very complementary towards each other, especially like when we're working in a project. Our knowledge is shared, our thoughts are shared about each individual issue, and
mhm.
together we come to solutions. So we are working as a team on each project, and I think this is where our strength is. Our network is really big, and yeah, very happy that I joined last year. It's been a huge contribution to my type of work.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks very much, Chantal. Where can people go to get more information about Connective Payments?
Of course, to our website, connectivepayments.com,
Okay.
and of course to LinkedIn, to my personal profile or company profile.
Sounds great. To all our listeners, we'll be joining you again soon, and we'll bring you another interesting topic for Payments Dialogue. So, Chantal, again, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. It was very nice.
Great.